Please be aware, in this podcast series we talk about all areas of safeguarding, which some people may find upsetting. So please make sure you're okay listening to today's topic. Be mindful of those around you, such as children, that you might not want to listen in. Hi, I'm SSS Safeguarding Director Sam Preston.
And I'm former head teacher and content author Sarah Spinks.
Welcome back to Safeguarding Conversations. Today we're looking at relatively new territory for governors. We're looking at digital oversight, cyber risk and even insurance in schools and what governors need to know and do.
Yeah, and this is an area that many governors see as technical. Until quite recently, things like internet filtering, online monitoring or firewalls were considered the IT team's business, but that's changed. And now boards are expected to show real oversight because the safeguarding duty extends online as much as in the classroom.
Right, so it's a really big change for governance, isn't it?
Yeah.
With cyber threats rising, as we've seen, often, we've seen stuff, but particularly in the last couple of weeks, when you look at the risk to manufacturing and whatnot, but schools are also a real target. The cyber threats are rising and new DfE standards, because of that, governors just can't afford to sit back and let somebody else do this. Now, they don't have to become IT experts. Nobody is expecting that. But they do need to know what questions to ask.
Yeah, so I think let's start, Sam, with filtering and monitoring. So the DfE's 2024 digital standards made it clear. Every school and college must have systems in place to filter harmful content and monitor online use.
And that's not just set it and forget it. Governing bodies need to check these systems are working, review them at least annually and make sure the review's documented. They also need to know that block lists, like those from the Internet Watch Foundation, can't be bypassed.
Yeah, and I think also monitoring is equally important. It isn't just a technical feed. It needs to generate alerts, prompt the right safeguarding response and feed into the DSL's work. And don't forget, KCSIE 2025 is explicit. Staff need training on how filtering and monitoring work, and the DSL has to link this into wider safeguarding practice.
But filtering and monitoring are really only one piece of this, isn't it? Schools are also vulnerable to hacking, phishing, and even ransomware attacks. So we have seen that on the increase in the school setting. And that's where the DfE's cybersecurity standards come in.
Absolutely. So I think every school should carry out a cyber risk assessment each year and keep it updated. So a senior leader, should be the digital lead, working with the data protection officer, IT and finance staff. And the basics, I think they really matter. Patching software, keeping firewalls and antivirus up to date, secure staff accounts, and using multi-factor authentication for sensitive areas. It needs to be really clear.
Yeah, and don't forget backups. The 3-2-1 rule is a really good benchmark. 3 copies of data on 2 types of storage with 1 stored off-site. And just like you rehearse a fire drill, schools should rehearse their response to a cyber incident.
Yeah, and, while it's not mandatory, Cyber Essentials certification is one way schools can show they meet the basic standards and those baseline standards. And it reassures insurers, parents and governors that the school takes cyber risk seriously. All those details around Cyber Essentials are on that DfE guidance.
Yeah. Which brings us to insurance. Cyber incidents, they can cause financial damage, but also serious reputational harm. And governors check whether the school's insurance policy covers things like hacking, ransomware, forensic investigation costs, legal advice, or business interruption.
I know that some schools are part of the DfE's risk protection arrangement instead of using commercial insurance. If that's the case, then it's really important the governing boards check that fine print. Does it cover cyber? And are there conditions attached like needing secure backups? It's really important to check it.
Yeah, especially checking those conditions, absolutely. So let's bring this back to governors. As we've said, they don't need to be techies, but they do need to be curious. And useful questions include, like for filtering and monitoring, have we reviewed our systems this year? What happens when an alert's raised? Cybersecurity, when was our last risk assessment? Who is our SLT digital lead? Do we use multi-factor authentication? Insurance, what exactly does our policy cover? Are there any exclusions? And then in terms of overall governance, do governors actually see reports on filtering and cyber? Do they get training to understand the basics?
So I think those are really good practical prompts. Governors often say, I don't know what to ask. But the moment they start asking, the culture shifts. Leaders realise this is a board level priority and it's not a side issue.
And just like any other aspect, when something goes seriously wrong, and especially if it leads to a safeguarding breach, governance is where you start. When I was involved in reviews in serious cases, that's where I would start. What had governance put in place? You would check all that level out. And then if that was all okay, you then started looking at the application of how that governance guidance had been put into practice. So it's so important. And there are concrete steps boards can take. Commission an independent review. Put cyber risk on the school's risk register. Ask for regular reports. Clarify roles. Really important to do that. And provide short training briefings for you governors.
And also make sure that your policies are updated. Your online safety, your data protection, disaster recovery, and running a tabletop exercise, a kind of what if scenario. And I think that helps everyone see how the school would respond to a real cyber attack.
And take ownership, isn't it? It isn't just expecting the technical team to deal with it. I think, it is about raising that awareness. So I guess the takeaway is digital safety, it's no longer just an IT problem. It's a safeguarding issue, and governors are central to making sure systems are robust and risks are managed.
Exactly. And I think, by moving from that passive assurance of, we've got an IT provider, active oversight, those governing boards can protect pupils and staff and the school's reputation. So in today's digital world, that level of governance, it's not optional anymore. It's essential.
And that is a great note to end on, Sarah. Thanks for that. And thanks to you for joining us today on Safeguarding Conversations. And I hope you'll join us next time.